Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz saxophonist Adam Price. He talked about his latest 2018 CD, House Ghosts, written in a villa in Italy, and it's a great story. These days, he is again based in eastern Pennsylvania, but after graduating from Boyertown area senior high school, he went on to spend 2 years at Penn State University before transferring and receiving his bachelor's in Classical Clarinet Performance from New York University. Since then, he has performed and toured with many bands, songwriters, and musicians in New York City, Pennsylvania, and the rest of America. And he is on tour often. So get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Hey, Ed, thank you for taking a minute to talk about your latest album, Ghosts, and your career.
Yeah, you got it.
So let's go ahead and start off here with the brand new CD that's coming out. It's House Ghosts. And talk to me about how this project came about.
I've been collecting the tunes I've been writing for years and just figured it was time to put something out. So I just collected what I thought were my best compositions and decided to put them out there.
But what is it about Ghosts? What is it about House Ghosts? There's a lot of imagery here in the booklet and on the CD. What is that all about?
It kind of turned into something of a concept album. When I wrote the tunes, I didn't write them as such. Putting the project together, it definitely became one. I really love stories, ghost stories especially. I just love the idea of putting stories to music, and all the tunes on the album were all inspired by either people or places and the stories around them. The House Ghosts, the title track, I wrote in a villa in Italy. It was like ancient, and I was all alone by myself with a piano, and it was just really haunting and creepy. Thinking of the hundreds of people that walked through there over the hundreds of years and all their different stories and experiences, it just really inspired me. So I tried to take that and put it all together.
Beautiful. Are you familiar with the Mutual Musicians Foundation here in Kansas City?
I'm not, no.
It's one of the oldest houses that had jazz, every possible jazz individual in the history and the annals of jazz have come through it, from Charlie Parker to John Coltrane, Art Blakey. It was a local 627 union. Yeah. But I interviewed the director about 6 years ago, and one of those paranormal crews came through and did readings and went through it. And when they left, they were totally like, "Oh my God, this place it's electrified, it's alive." So,
that's cool.
So there's a lot of energy. If you ever get to KC, it's right down off 18 and Vine. It's basically, at this point, it's a all-night jam place on the weekends. They open it up at 1. Yeah, so it's kind of a incubator of young talent. So all the ghosts and the new blood that's in there, it's an interesting mincing of things for sure. So
awesome. I'll definitely check it out.
Absolutely. So speaking of towns and cities, you grew up in Pennsylvania, correct?
Yeah.
Right on. So the town that you were in is Boyertown?
Yeah, that was my hometown.
Talk to me about growing up, your family, and how you got into jazz.
I grew up in a bunch of cornfields, really. There wasn't a lot of live music in my area, so just hanging out with my grandparents, they grew up in like the 40s and they were all into the big band jazz stuff, so they would give me like CDs of like Benny Goodman or whatever. It's just what I knew, that and my dad's 45 collection, because we didn't have TV growing up or anything, so that was really my media exposure, and that's really how I got into jazz, I guess, is just what I started with.
Cool. What albums were you listening to? What musicians were really moving you?
I mean, Benny Goodman, of course, a lot of the old big band guys, because that's all I knew. I didn't discover anything else until like high school. Like I didn't discover like Kind of Blue, Miles Davis stuff, or any of the smaller jazz combo stuff of the 60s or anything like that. It was just like big band through elementary and middle school. That's all I grew up with.
You spent 2 years at Penn State, and then you go to New York University. Talk to me about what you learned in that kind of a collegiate university setting about music.
Yeah. Well, Penn State and NYU were very different environments. One of the reasons I moved to NYU is because there wasn't a lot of playing opportunities at Penn State outside of the college, the university. It was kind of a dead end, if you will. So I wanted something with a little more opportunity, I guess, especially for like jazz. And I think it was a pretty good move. I actually studied classical music at NYU. That was my major, classical clarinet. I got a lot of my jazz experiences in just like outside of school. New York is definitely the place to do that, as opposed to like middle of nowhere Pennsylvania. So.
Well, and you're not just proficient on the clarinet. You got the sax, you got the flute.
Yeah.
You're getting more involved with woodwinds. How does all of that play in? Are you just kind of a restless soul, or do all of them kind of lead in for some, kind of music overall approach that you have?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get bored really easily, which is, I just, if I get bored, I just go find a new instrument and try to learn it. And there's a billion saxophone players out there, and I like to think I'm pretty good, but I'm certainly not anywhere close to being the best or even average. In today's world, like everyone plays saxophone and they're all great. So many great saxophone players out there, but I started on clarinet and there's really not that many clarinet players. There's a handful of really good ones, but compared to the amount of really good sax players, it's a lot easier. And I'm a little more comfortable on clarinet too. I started out on it, so.
I always hear with the clarinet, it can be your best friend, but it's just that one note that can sink everything.
Yeah, there's a few tough ones in there, for sure.
You get to New York, and when you got there, coming from the cornfields of Pennsylvania, it had to be quite a jolt to you to not only be able to be in New York, but to play in those clubs and to be around there.
Yeah, it was definitely a culture shock, for sure.
So what was it like? Were you nervous when you got on stage the first time in New York, or did it feel right? Was music the destination that you had for your life?
Honestly, I still feel nervous every time I get on stage. But yeah, it's just like anything. The more you practice it, the better you get at performing and dealing with your nerves. So, I mean, sure, the first few times I played in New York, it was really stressful and scary for sure. Because, legends live there.
Speaking of ghosts, that's the place where they're all at, for sure. Talk to me a little bit about when you got out of school, when college was over, and kind of between then and now, kind of some of the things that have taken place as far as your career is concerned that's led up to you currently doing what you've been doing, which is recording and performing and being a teacher.
Definitely hasn't been anything of a straight path, It took me a long time to get my degree. I took some time off and did some moving around. But yeah, I just trying to make ends meet and working when I was living in New York, just working like, full-time jobs and then playing gigs at night. And after a while, New York just wasn't sustainable for me. So I dipped out and moved back to Pennsylvania for a while outside of Philly and just focused on making money for a year, just like bartending and stuff. And after a while, I just realized that it didn't make me happy at all. That music was really the only thing that I wanted to do with my life. Send up a quick prayer and jumped head first in and just did whatever it would take and hustled as hard as I could. I got some ship gigs and I got some tour gigs and just, I would take whatever came my way. And eventually I started getting my name out there enough that I could actually make ends meet.
So you're still in Pennsylvania?
At the moment, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I just wanted to kind of get a geographic sense here. So talk to me about overall the years, the struggle between New York and Pennsylvania and all that you've done. What have you taken from all of this to teach your kids that you teach?
I tell my kids that it's really important that they follow their heart, obviously, I also tell them not to trust entirely what anyone else says, because I've had a lot of teachers and people in positions of power tell me things like you're not good enough or you'll never make it as a musician, et cetera, and I listened to them for a long time. You know, as a kid, we think, or at least I did, that, you know, teachers or professors, they have all the answers because they've gotten so far with their career and they're successful and they have money and a house and like a job, and that they're always right, but they're not. They're just people like us, and they're just as flawed as we are. The age doesn't really matter so much. So that's what I really try and get to my kids. That includes me too. I tell them, don't believe me if it doesn't sit with you right, you know?
Sure. Up to this point, are you happy with how everything's turned out?
Yeah, I guess. I don't think I would be the same person I am now had I not had those experiences, you know? So, obviously there's things I would like to have happen. Obviously I want my career to keep growing and you know, become internet famous and all that stuff, but I'm happy. Yeah, sure.
Let me ask you this. What live jazz shows have you witnessed that left a really deep impact on you?
I went to see Nat Cohen at Zinc Bar in New York City in the Village. And it was with her Brazilian group. Jeez. Just frickin' blew my mind. I in awe. She's been one of my favorites for so long, but to see her just shred right in front of me, it was incredible. She came up afterwards. She just walked by and said, "Hey," and I couldn't even respond. I couldn't even speak. I was so blown away. It was really awesome.
Wow. So, with that in mind, why do you love jazz?
I think it's the freedom. I love being able to solo. It's so much more challenging and interesting, and keeps me involved so much more than other music does. I play with a bunch of bands that aren't jazz as well. Like I play with this jam country band, and I play with this electronica band. But all those you have solos every once in a while, but the form is very, very set, and it doesn't change that much. Like you have a solo for one chorus and that's it. Like you don't want to take a 15-minute solo, obviously. Like with jazz, everything is so loose. You have a form, you have solos, you have a head. I don't know, it just seems like there's a lot more freedom to it, a lot more interplay between the musicians than any other music that I found, anyway. Right on.
So before I get to my final question here, I do want to know, I've spent some time in Italy, and I can attest to, we think we are dated in America, but we're not. When you go to Europe, you realize how young we are, and when you get out there, you realize how many centuries these things have existed before we were even a speck on the world map. My question to you is this. I know the feeling that I get from listening to this album. I feel what you said between kind of that spiritual realm you're talking about and these old villas and these Italian towns. But what do you want the listener to get from this album specifically? How do you want them to feel?
I want it to be an experience for them. I want them to hear stories. It doesn't have to be the story I had in my head, but I'd like it to take them on a journey of some sort.
I like it. And speaking of a journey here, this is my final question. Everyone has a perception of you. They think they know who you are in a certain way. Your family, your friends, your fans, your students. But you know yourself best. Who do you think you are?
I've been trying to figure that out my whole life.
That's right. I understand.
Yeah, man, I don't know. I'm just me.
I like it. Sometimes brevity is the best way to answer that one. Adam, thank you for taking a minute out. I appreciate you talking to me about House Ghost, your life in Pennsylvania, New York, and beyond, and good luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Joe.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Pennsylvania, New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Adam for his time, his music, and those great stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.